Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some bacon Gouda chicken mushroom mac and cheese. And we're going to bake up a batch of our Aunt Aggie's, and then we're going to whip up a fresh batch of Aunt Aggie's dough to pop in the freezer, and we're going to do some Christmas colors with that, since we're going to be eating up our last of our fall ones. So let's start by getting our bacon crisping up in my little Dutch oven here. So we can get that nice bacon flavor in our mac and cheese. And then we'll drop our noodles in because we've got just about at a boil here. So I've got a ½ pound of bacon that we're gonna snip up so we can kind of get nice crispy little bacon bits. And then we'll cook our chicken up in that bacon grease. So I'm just gonna use my kitchen shears and we're gonna snip it this way. It's much easier to just snip our little pieces than it is to, put it out on a cutting board and cut it up. So let's get these guys. I drop it and cut it up. And as it cooks and heats up, the bacon will break apart, so you don't really have to worry about separating it too much. We'll use our tongs to kind of help it get into your little bacon bit parts for it. Okay, let me go wash my hands. Let's get our noodles. I'm going to turn on my stove here. We're going to start off about a 7, and then we'll turn it down once our bacon starts kind of cooking up here. I've got a pretty vigorous boil here, so we're going to drop in some of our corkscrew pasta. You can use also regular macaroni, but I kind of love the corkscrew when I make mac and cheese. Just makes it more fun. So we're going to put in, we don't need a whole lot. A big box of this makes a lot of mac and cheese. So we're going to use about half the box. Runaway noodle. Especially because this is mac and cheese is going to be loaded up with some mushrooms and bacon and chicken and other goodness. So we don't need to have a full batch of noodles. Let's get a little spoon here. Give our noodles a little bit of a stir. There we go. And I'm going to just put it right down on kind of a nice high here. And then before we start on our cookies, I want to get my chicken kind of seasoned up and sliced so that after our bacon's cooked up, we can put that in there. So I have 2 chicken breasts here. We are going to fillet them in half, and then we will season them up, or we'll slice them up and then we'll season them so they have lots of great flavor. And the filleting in half is just allows our chicken not to be so thick when we cook it up and saute it, so that it kind of traps in the moisture and we can kind of sear it off in a high heat without overcooking it. And then I'm just going to kind of do nice kind of chicken kind of strips and chunks of it that we'll have throughout our mac and cheese. So I don't want any pieces too big because again you want to be able to eat it without a knife. And also, filleting your chicken in half allows you to break up some of those tendons, which gives you a more tender piece of chicken. Slice this down the middle so that I can get slightly smaller chunks. And for our seasoning on here, we're going to really keep it simple. We're going to use a little bit of Worcestershire, and that's just to help keep the chicken nice and juicy. Then some onion powder, garlic, salt, and a little bit of Mrs. Dash's table blend. But one thing that we're going to add into the base of our mac and cheese when we make it, just to give it a little pop of flavor, is a little bit of truffle oil, because it just has this great flavor that pairs well with, mushrooms, but also with Gouda. I really love it, so I think it will work really well in the mac and cheese. Trim off a little bit of this fat here. And then I'll get some tongs out so we can give our bacon a little bit of a stir here once we've got this all kind of trimmed up. Okay, those all look pretty good. I'm gonna spread them out a little bit. I'll go wash my hands. Okay, let me grab some tongs. That way we can just kind of give my noodles a little stir. But then we can just kind of break apart our bacon. Now that my Dutch oven's nice and hot, I'm gonna turn it down to more of a medium temperature. And I'm just gonna use my tongs to kind of break apart the bacon here until you've got all those pieces nice and loose.
You have a question? What would you recommend to use to reduce saltiness?
For the saltiness of bacon, you could just go with, they have like a reduced sodium bacon that you can use for the saltiness of it. You could use a little bit less bacon so you don't get quite as much of that salty flavor in your mac and cheese. In there, you can also kind of, when you're adding in additional salt later, you can use less of it for it. But if you're really watching it, they do make reduced sodium bacon. Okay, let's get a little drizzle of Worcestershire. This is gonna help make this chicken nice and juicy. I've got my onion powder, which will give it a nice savory flavor and a little bit of a kind of a brownish crust on it when we saute it up. We're gonna use a good amount, like probably a teaspoon and a half, but enough to really coat it and get that onion flavor in. And then I have some Mrs. Dash's Table Blend, which is a finely blended like mix of spices, but it's kind of a good everything spice. I'll sprinkle that over, and then of course we'll go with a little bit of garlic salt. And I've used probably about a teaspoon of the Mrs. Dash's. And then since we have a little, it's about 1.5 pounds of chicken here, I'm gonna use about a teaspoon of garlic salt. So a couple good shakes over. Give this a quick little toss on here, and we'll push it down so that it can start to crisp up in its fat. Let me get a tong right here, and then what we're just gonna do is we're just gonna kind of toss our chicken in here so it has a chance to kind of really coat in all of those spices, kind of spread them around with any that is kind of laying on your cutting board. There we go. And now we'll just let them sit until we're ready to toss them in and sear them off. But while we're doing that, we are going to work on our Aunt Aggie's cookies. So I have a log here that we're gonna bake up. This is, you keep it in the freezer and then you take it out when you're ready to cook. I always like to take it out and let it sit for just about 5 minutes so it's not rock hard to cut through. So we'll cut these up and we'll start baking them in just a second, but we're gonna work on our new batch, which is our Christmas themed, because I love to have these just sitting in my freezer. So whenever my kids ask, hey, can we have some cookies? I can pull out a log and cut them up and have cookies in less than 10 minutes. So we're gonna start, and when I do this, I make a double batch. I do have this recipe card, I believe available for everybody. I think this was a freebie that we gave out to everybody in the spring. So I'll have to go look in there. But I'm doing a double batch of what's on my recipe card here so that I can make 4 to 5 logs of cookies. We're gonna start with 2 cups of softened butter. And we're gonna put it all in here. And if Aunt Aggie's, which is a family recipe that goes back to my husband's family from the 1800s, is like a mix between a butter and a sugar cookie. They're just really delicious and simple. They're not overly sweet, like a sugar cookie, but they're not also just overly buttery like a butter cookie. It's like that happy medium, and they are probably our family's favorite overall cookie that everyone, I think this is the collective, the cookie that everyone likes. So we've got our 4 sticks of butter, which is equal to 2 cups. And we're just gonna cream that in our, did I turn it on and put it in? Yep. Okay, let's try that again. There we go. We're gonna cream it in our thing until we've just got it loosened up a little bit. So just enough to kind of mix it there. And then we're gonna add in 3 cups of granulated sugar. So I'm just gonna give my bacon a quick little toss here. And once our bacon's crisped up, we will take it out and saute our chicken off, and then we'll remove that and do our mushrooms, and then we'll make a roux with whatever drippings and whatnot are left over for our mac and cheese. So let me grab my sugar. We're gonna put in 3 cups of granulated sugar, and it has to be white sugar. You can't really use brown sugar with this recipe. It will completely change the flavor profiles. So we're gonna use 3 cups. Spoon. Fill this. I've got like a sugar berg in my thing. There we go. Yeah, how when you get a little bit humid, your sugar clumps together. And I had it stored in before I poured it in my container. Okay. Give it a couple things. There we go. That should be good. Okay. So that was 1 cup of sugar. 2 cups of sugar, and 3 cups of sugar. We're going to cream our butter and our sugar together until we've got this nice rich taste to it. And again, you want to use room temperature butter, otherwise it will take a really long time for it to cream together. Looking good. And since we're doing Christmas, I'll use my Christmas spatula. I'm just going to use my spatula to push down the sides. I always do this because sometimes your butter likes to get stuck, and you want to make sure you push it down before your final end product so that everything does get mixed in together well. Okay. So we've got our butter and our sugar creamed together. Step over here for a second. Our bacon's almost there. I'm going to turn it down just now to about a 4. And then I'm going to give my noodles a little bit of a stir as well. I think here's my noodle. They still need, I can feel they still need another 2 or 3 minutes until they get that more tender thing. Okay. The next part about this, which makes it a little less fun, is we need 6 yolks to this recipe because the yolks give it a just really lovely richness to it. And you don't want to add the whites because it will just make the cookies too runny. So 1. Now you can always save your whites for something. I always say I'm going to make something with my whites like a meringue, and I never do. So 2. Pull that one out. 3. And there's lots of different ways you can separate your eggs. This is just the way that I've always done it. 4. Now there's a way where you can just crack your eggs and then you just kind of scoop each egg out. That's actually is really easy, but I've just always done it this way. Where you kind of toss it back and forth, and that way you can really separate that kind of slimy egg white off of it. And we'll get our 6th egg yolk in here. There we go. And we're going to cream the egg yolk into our mixture until it's nice and mixed in. And it gives it a rich yellow color. And then I'm going to take my spatula here and I'm just going to push off of my blender because I see a little bit of butter there that's not mixing in. Okay. We'll get this going. And then we're going to slice up our cookies before we finish them up. Okay.
And about how many cookies will this make?
This will probably make close to 100 cookies, this batch here. Maybe a little bit more. They're small cookies. Actually, I think it's probably close to 200 cookies because they're small. It makes a lot of cookies. I actually don't cook them up all at one time. I wrap them in plastic wrap, pop them in the freezer, hence the one we just took out of the freezer. And then when I want them, I'll cut them up and bake them, because these are cookies you have to bake from, they're like a freezer cookie. So you bake them while they're frozen, and they only need to bake at 350 for 7 minutes. It's really, really fast. Okay, we're gonna add in our baking soda and our cream of tartar. So our baking soda is our leavening agent. It's gonna give them a little puff. Since this is a double batch, I'm gonna add in 2 teaspoons of baking soda. So 1 and 2. And then we are gonna be doing 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar. And this is kind of the binder that holds it together, and it prevents your cookie from getting too runny. Since my half one doesn't fit, I'm gonna use, or my full one doesn't fit, I'm gonna do 4 halves to get in here, because the spice container lid is just a little small. 2, 3, and 4. And we're gonna give this a good mix until that is all creamed in there. And then we're gonna fish out our bacon now, because our bacon is ready to come out. So I've got my bacon nice and crispy here. We're gonna take it out. That way we can saute off our chicken.
Shannon sent you a gift.
Well, thank you, Shannon. We appreciate that here. We're gonna fish all of this lovely bacon out. I'm gonna turn, so we got that creamed up well. And I'll put it far away from the cameraman. No, I'll leave it there so he gets his little treats. Keeps him going, keeps his hands steady. Gotta make sure he's well nourished. Okay, and then we're gonna we'll check our noodles, because I think they should be just about done. But let me turn this up, and then we are gonna drop in our chicken here, because we're ready to saute this guy off. So I'm gonna put it in 2 batches so that I don't have it too crowded. That way they all get a really good sear in this bacon grease for it. And I don't wanna overcook it or make it rubbery by crowding it in the pan. So I'm just gonna put enough to kind of put it on the base of our little Dutch oven here. I'm gonna get 1 more piece in there. Beautiful. Now let me check these noodles, because I feel like we're just about perfect. So I'm gonna strain them, and then we'll hold them to the side until we're ready to throw them in. I don't need any of my water, so we'll just dump it all out. Okay, give it a good shaky shake. But you can see a half a box of noodles gives you a lot of noodles. So don't overestimate how many you need and put the whole box in, because you'll have mac and cheese for days. Okay, before we finish up the next part of our cookie, let's get this one. It's nice, it's got a little less firmness to it. We're gonna slice it up and get it to bake.
You got a comment that you should do like merchandise, like shirts and sweatshirts, and one of them should say, "Keep it away from the cameraman."
Yeah, that is. I know somebody's been saying I need to make some like stickers or whatnot, and I think that might be a good one. I'm gonna bring this right over here so that we can start putting them on once we cut them up. Now with this, I say take it out of the freezer for just like 5 minutes or so until it's a little bit softer. And then you're just going to slice it. If you try to cut it right away out of the freezer, it is rock hard. You can do it. It just takes a little bit more pressure on your knife. So you're gonna slice these, and then I try to get them as evenly sliced, but it's okay if they're a little off. You don't have to be perfect. There we go. And we're gonna start spreading them out, and you wanna put them on parchment paper. Now these do not spread out a lot, so you don't have to worry about them running super flat. They're really, the binder, the cream of tartar that we use in here helps keep them together. I've dyed these nice fall colors because we made these for our fall, but now we're leaning into the winter season because Thanksgiving is here, but I am an early decorator. Growing up, we always decorated the day after Thanksgiving, but you know what? It's too short. I need a whole 2 months of festivities. And I'm like the person who the day after Christmas, it's done. I'm like, we're done. It's not Christmas anymore. And so I like to get it in early. So I will say these bake up, and these are like, I make my logs kind of small because we like them nice and small cookies. You can make them a little bit wider so you can have a bigger cookie. But I think I love these because they're almost like a little like, you know, just a small little cookie that you can just snack, like pick a couple of them at a time and eat and not feel too guilty about it. Okay, pop these guys on. I think I can enable one more in there. Before we pop these in the oven, I'm gonna get my chicken flipped over here because we've got it nice and beautiful sears on it, looking gorgeous. We're cooking it off in our bacon grease. We've got onion powder, garlic salt, Worcestershire, Mrs. Dash's table blend on it. So just some nice, perfect, beautiful seasoning, and we're cooking it in the bacon grease. So with that, we'll add even more flavors. Let's get our cookies in the oven. So these cookies, they bake up really fast. You don't want to overbake them. Overbaking them will make you sad because they get crispy. And not that they're bad crispy, but you want to keep them when they're soft. Now, when you first bake them, you won't be able to take them off the cookie sheet yet. They need to sit for about 5 minutes before they firmed up. And the best time to eat them, as my kids like to say, is 10 minutes after they're baked is the best time. We're gonna bake these for 7 minutes. And 7 minutes is, you're gonna think they might be a little undone, but they're not. They're gonna sit and firm up, and they are the best cookies ever. They're so good. Okay, let's set this over here. I think our chicken is pretty much done with the first batch, so I'm going to grab a little bowl for that, and we'll then drop the second batch in.
Oh, you have a question? Are they similar to sugar cookies?
They're similar, but they're not as sweet as a sugar cookie. So I always say they're like a hybrid between a butter cookie and a sugar cookie. So they're like the baby, the happy little, you know, cross between the two of them. And because they've got that nice richness of a butter cookie, but it's not so intense. And the same thing, they've got a little bit of sweetness like a sugar cookie, but they're not super sweet. They're just this unique, perfect, simple cookie that has both the butter and the sugar flavors to it. Okay, I've got our second batch of chicken going in here. Okay.
And are they soft and chewy?
They are, when you first eat them out of the oven, after 10 minutes until like 30 minutes, they've got this nice softness to them and chewy. Then the next day, they just firm up a little bit, but they're not crispy. But they're lovely. So they're really soft the first day, and then the second day they're firm. And they last, they're good for about 3 to 4 days. They never make it that long in our family, but they do last for a while. Okay, let me push this dough down, and we're gonna finish up creaming it. Right now, we have our 4 sticks of butter, 3 cups of sugar, 6 egg yolks, 2 teaspoons of baking soda, and 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar. So we've got pretty much all of our ingredients in here except the flour. And when you make this, you need to use salted butter. Don't use unsalted, or you'll have to add some salt in it, but you need to have, it just gives it the perfect level of it. And then we're gonna add in 4 cups of all-purpose flour. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we'll cream these together. There we go. I always like to start it on low, and then as it gets a little bit worked in, we can go and move it up a little bit higher.
Is there a substitute for cream of tartar?
Cream of tartar is the binding agent in this, so there really is no substitute for it. Now, cream of tartar sometimes goes by the name alum, so you might be able to find it as alum instead of cream of tartar if you can't find it, but you have to use it. There's really no good substitute. Or at least nothing that I've worked with that has contained it. Got it? Over here. We're going to use my spatula here, just push it a little bit down, and then we have our base dough. Now, you do not have to dye these. I like dyeing them because I like to be festive. But you can also just leave them the color that they are, which is kind of a nice kind of yellowish color to it. But it has a thickness to it that allows it to, be shaped into the log, and it holds together well. It's not a sticky, super tacky dough to it, which makes it just wonderful.
Mary sent you a little corgi. I'll show you after.
Well, thank you. I love little corgis. They're such a funny looking dog. They're so cute. Here, we'll get these guys scraped off. If only my children knew they'd come running. My kids love this dough, and it's a different type of dough. It's not like your typical chocolate chip cookie dough. But it's really good. They love it. Okay, so here you can see we just have this wonderful thick dough, and we're gonna dye it up here in a little bit. I'm gonna move my KitchenAid out of the way so that I can have some space to work. This thing is so heavy. And I will say, a KitchenAid, or it works better, this does not whip up as well with a hand mixer. And that's because the dough is actually pretty thick and pretty dense. And so a hand mixer just doesn't have the power to mix it all the way through. I got my area, but we'll get to mixing our color in just a second. Okay, it looks like we've got our chicken seared off right here. So we'll add in our next batch, or take it out. And then I'm gonna slice up my mushrooms, and we're gonna saute them in this little residual bacon grease. I'm gonna throw in just a smidge of truffle oil too. But keeping it simple. And then we'll remove our mushrooms and we'll make our roux for this. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this down super low and kind of turn off my heat, kind of slide it off just a little bit so that my little bits don't get too cooked up while I start slicing up our mushrooms here. So I've got some baby bellas, and we're just gonna do some nice thin slices on them. That way you get lots of mushrooms throughout, but it's not overpowering big chunks of mushrooms.
Tammy sent you a gift.
Oh, thank you, Tammy. We appreciate that. We'll slice this up. I think I'll be good with just these. And you can always just use pre-sliced mushrooms if you want. I do like using the slicing myself. Okay, we're gonna go get our Aunt Aggie's out, but I'm gonna drop these in while we do. And let's go grab our cookies. Okay. Now these are ones you don't want to leave because they cook up fast, and that's because they're little cookies. But look how gorgeous they are. So they puff up when they're baked, but then when they cool, they do set down, but they don't sink in. They just flatten out a little bit. But they are always fun, pretty, and beautiful, especially when you use lots of fun colors with them. We're gonna do our Christmas colors here, but like my kids, when it's their birthday, I do the colors of whatever their birthday theme is, and then of course, every holiday. I have to do different themed ones. So we've got our fall ones right here with our mixture of like red, green, orange, and yellow. But again, the dough just starts out with this yellow base, and it is such a simple dough. You know, it's the butter, sugar, cream of tartar, egg yolks, and baking soda. So it is a really simple recipe, but it is a favorite here. Just so lovely and delicious. And they bake up so fast, and they're perfect things to have in your pan, or like in your freezer whenever you want to kind of do a, you know, bake up some cookies. They last in your freezer for like 2 to 3 months. They stay fresh well. They don't get freezer burn or whatnot. Okay, we've got our mushrooms in here sauteing up. And this, as I saute, I'm just gonna kind of scrape the little bits. I added a little bit of regular oil, and then I'm gonna add in some truffle oil. Now, this is a white truffle oil. It has this lovely kind of flavor to it. If you've ever had any like truffle dishes, it's just adds this wonderful flavor. It's pretty strong, so you don't need a whole lot. So I put in probably like a half a teaspoon in here. But I do love using it in my mac and cheese when I do like a Gouda mac, because it really goes well with Gouda and some of those like more simple white cheeses. Not so much with cheddar. You don't want to use it with cheddar. Those two flavor profiles really conflict with each other because they're just competing for it. Okay, our mushrooms are almost here, nice and seasoned or sauteed up. I'm gonna add a little bit of garlic salt on them. And then we'll take them out and we're gonna make our roux. So give it a little bit of salt. I always let them saute for a minute or two before I salt them, because, you know, you just don't want them to sweat out their liquids too much before they can get that nice little sear on it. The salt does cause the mushrooms to kind of sweat its liquids, and therefore I like to give a little bit of that regular saute on it. But look, we're getting these just a lovely brownish color on them. So I'm gonna grab a bowl and we'll be ready to take those out here in just a second. The cameraman is enjoying his little selection of bacon and chicken over there. There. Perfect. And as you can see, the mushrooms actually help kind of deglaze the pan a little bit, bring up some of those little tasty bits. So I'm gonna turn my pan off right now, because then we're gonna add in our butter and some flour, and we're gonna make a roux. Essentially, we're making the base for a macaroni and cheese. For this one, I'm gonna do a little bit of a bechamel sauce. But once you add your cheese in it, you turn your bechamel into a Mornay. Which is your base for pretty much every mac and cheese if you do a roux base or a flour based mac and cheese. And I will say, like, a lot of times I will just do kind of a cheese and butter and cream based mac and cheese, and that is great for mac and cheese that is going to be eaten up like in one serving. Like, it's not going to be reheated for leftovers. Using a roux, a flour base, is actually better for ones that are going to be leftovers, because the cheese doesn't congeal back together. Okay, let me grab, where did my butter go? Let's grab a little. Okay, we're gonna make our roux base for this. So you don't need a whole lot of butter in here, but I want enough to kind of take up things. So we're gonna do about a tablespoon and a half of butter. And we're gonna melt that, and then once it's sufficiently melted, we're gonna add in about a tablespoon and a half of flour. I'm gonna grab my whisk out here. Give it, I'm gonna turn my stove back on to low. Don't heat your butter up on too high of heat. Again, you don't want it to scorch or anything like that. Now we're making our roux in our pan with our drippings in it, so we'll have these little tasty little bits in there that will add little like specks of flavor. But it's just gonna add that nice mushroom and bacon and chicken flavor, because we do have that bacon grease in here as well. So we'll get this. You can see we even have a couple little tidbits of mushrooms and everything, and that's not a big problem. You just want to have the majority of your stuff out so that you can get that sauteing on the pan and whatnot. Okay, I'm not gonna mix my colors in yet, but we'll get it ready. I'm gonna do green and red for this. And I like to mix with my green. I kind of do a mixture of regular green and neon because it just gives it that nice, little bit more of that festive green color to it. And we'll get that, and then I'll leave part of it untouched so that you kind of have that red, white, and green colors for Christmas. Okay, the butter is pretty much melted here. So let me grab my flour. And we're gonna add in, again, about 1.5 tablespoons. You want kind of equal parts butter and flour for this. And then you're gonna mix it together to form kind of this paste. And this is called a roux. And this is going to thicken up the liquid that we add into our mac and cheese or for it on there. So we're gonna give this, you wanna let it cook for just about, at least a minute. Don't rush to put your liquids in here. You don't wanna keep cooking it until it goes brown, which would be a base of a gumbo. So I kind of cook it to where here, we do have those little tasty bits in there that are making it have a darker color, but if there were no tasty bits in here and you were doing just butter and flour, it would have a pale color. And the longer you cooked it, it would go to like a rich brown, like an amber to a rich brown. And it gives it more depth, it gives it a more nutty kind of flavor to it the longer you cook it. Okay, now that it's got a good kind of heating up part to it, we're gonna use a mixture of cream and whole milk.
You have a question? Why do a roux this time, and can you do it without the roux?
So I'm doing a roux this time because I have that bacon grease and those flavors to it, and this has a lot more substantial bit to it. So I just figured, I was like, I think this will marry better and give me a little bit creamier sauce to it. You could definitely do it without a roux in here. You could just melt some butter and then cream and then throw in your mac and cheese, like cream, and then throw in your noodles, or not your noodles, your cheese, and go from there. This is just gonna give it a little bit of a kind of a slightly richer, creamier base texture to it. Here, so we're gonna give this a nice thing, and it's just gonna help bring up those flavorful meat bits to it, which won't necessarily incorporate in as well with just the cheese. Here, and then we're gonna use, I put in, that was about, I wanna say like a cup of whole milk, and then we're gonna use just about, maybe a 1/2 cup of cream. You don't need a whole lot. I'm putting the wrong lid on my cream. Okay, so now you can see we've got this nice kind of rich velvety base to it. This is technically a bechamel or sauce, but when you add cheese to it, change it to a completely different sauce, and then I have this kind of collection of cheeses that we're gonna do, but Gouda is going to be the star for it on here. Now, hand shredding your mac and cheese or your cheese is gonna give you an even creamier base to it, but you can always use pre-shredded in a pinch. I'm gonna start, we're not gonna pour all of it in here, but I'm gonna add in about a cup of Gouda, because Gouda is my star here. We'll mix it in. And then I have a mixture of Swiss and Gruyere. Again, I'm sticking with these kind of white, more simple cheeses that will pair well with the bacon and the truffle and the mushrooms. We're gonna do about like 1/3 to a 1/2 cup of mixture, and then we're gonna add in a little bit of Parmesan cheese as well. We're gonna do about a 1/4 cup of Parmesan. Parmesan has a pretty strong flavor to it. You can see, and we will add more cheese in as we make it and our topping, but look just how rich and creamy this part is already. So just gorgeous. Keep your heat down low, because again, you do not want it to kind of burn or at the bottom of your pan. But look, again, how just gorgeous this is. Before we add our noodles in, I am going to taste it to see if we need to add any more spices. We might need to add a little bit of garlic salt, but again, I'm gonna do a little bit of garlic salt and then a little bit more truffle oil. So we're gonna do probably, it's a brand new garlic salt so it doesn't come out, you know, a half a teaspoon or so more. And then I'm just gonna do a slight drizzle more of our truffle oil. Like a half a teaspoon more. Let's give that a good mix in to get those flavors in there. Perfect. Okay, now we're gonna add in our noodles. Don't worry if they're all stuck together. By the time we start stirring this up, they'll get completely coated. And you're just gonna kind of coat those noodles up. Here, beautiful. You see just how cheesy it is and how wonderful. I'm gonna turn, again, my oven down, or my stove down as low as I possibly can. And we're gonna now add our like tasty bits of everything back in. So add your mushrooms, including any of the residual like juices from the mushroom, because that's gonna add just great flavor. So we'll kind of coat those up. Bring that in here. Looking gorgeous. And then we've got our chicken. Coat that, and then we have our bacon. And then we will sprinkle some more cheese on, and I'm gonna cut up a little green onion in here. And then we'll just pop it in the oven for just a few minutes to bake up while we mix in our dyes on our cookies, and then we'll be ready to eat. And then of course, bacon. So we've got our bacon bits in there with that bacon grease that we cooked everything in, which adds, again, just great flavor. And some fresh green onions to add a nice little pop of onion flavor in here, just a little bit of freshness to it. So we'll snip these up. You always want to add these towards the end. With the baking process, that will be fine, but when you're sauteing it, you'll dull out their flavors. Okay. Now we'll mix these in, and then we're gonna do just a nice layer of cheese on top to get you that cheesy crust to it, and then we'll bake it up. So push every little tasty bits down. And I don't do a whole lot, but you can definitely cake it on more if you want to. But there's already a good amount of cheese in here. So we'll sprinkle about another half cup of Gouda over it. I've got my Swiss and Gruyere. And then a little bit of Parmesan. And if you want to, you could toss some panko breadcrumbs and a little bit of butter and like a little garlic salt, and you could put those on top for a little crunch. But let's go pop this in the oven, and then we're gonna whip up our cookies. Let's see if actually let me go get my pot holders because it's a little warm. Now I always make it in a Dutch oven here because then it goes so nicely into the oven to cook up. And the Dutch oven, it's a cast iron, it's nice and thick, so it kind of prevents it from burning at the bottom. So I left my oven on at 350 from baking up the cookies, but I'm going to actually turn it to my air fryer setting, which will allow it to get nice and bubbly in the next kind of 5 minutes. Gets it that perfect little touch to it. So let's get our dye mixed in on our cookies, and we'll get ready. I'm gonna give my hands a quick wash. And then we'll shape up and put ours in the molds. So I cleaned up my area before. Grab my oven mitts over here. We're gonna take out all of our dough onto our counter, because again, it's kind of like Play-Doh. And if you have little kids, they love mixing this in as well. So this makes, it might seem like, oh, that's not a lot of dough. This makes a lot of cookies.
You have a question? Is the air fryer setting the same as convection?
Yes, you can pretty much use convection bake. It does pretty much the exact same thing. So we've got that. We're gonna do our distinct kind of colors. So I divide it up. Whatever number of colors I'm doing, I divide it up. I'm gonna leave one in the kind of the whitish yellow color. And
do you know what you're making for dinner yet?
I do not know yet. Not sure. But I have too many options. We're gonna do red first because red will hide if I get a little in the green. So make a little kind of well, and then with red, you do want to add a good amount to get that rich red color, or it can come out pink. And then I kind of close it up. This is still a very messy process. As you can see, I've already spilled it out, but just knead it onto your counter. If you want it to be mess-free, put it in a Ziploc baggie with it and then kind of knead it in. So, but it's the fun part here. And this is kind of the best way I have found to bring these colors in on here. There we go. Bring and pull, bring and pull. And I will say they do get a little bit more intense in the colors when they sit versus when you first knead them up. There we go. So we've got our first beautiful red blob. Now I'm going to wash my hands. Your hands will get a little bit dyed, but it's the life of a baker. And I will attempt to clean this as much now, but we'll give it a deep clean later for it. So you got the first round off, but that's why I always, when I do it, I kind of pick on what colors can take a little bit of color onto it. So I always do my lighter colors first, and then I end with my darkest colors. And then we've got our green, which I've already missed the dough thing. And we're gonna add a pinch of this in. And then before I mix this up and get my hands too crazy dirty, did my timer go off, or did my timer did not go off. It was just telling me it was at the temperature. I just wanna make sure I grabbed it there. Okay, so now we're gonna mix these in, same way. I used a little bit of the neon green with the dark green because I find that it just gives you a little bit nicer of that green holiday color. And you can also just use the neon if you want more of a Grinchy color to it, which is nice as well. But this I find is the easiest way to do it. You can mix it with a spoon, or you can take it, you're in your paddle mixer and use your paddle to mix in the color. But this is always fun. There we go. So we've got our beautiful green colors. So beautiful pops of colors. Get my hands somewhat washed up and clean. And then I'm going to show you how we put them in our log, and then you store them up for when you want to bake them. And when you want to bake them, all you do is you bake them at 350 for 7 minutes. And they come out puffy, but as you can see now, this is kind of the perfect setting of where they come out now. They're lovely, they're soft and kind of chewy, and like got a perfect texture to them. And they're delicious.
What's your countertops?
This is quartz. So if I put a good little spray of cleaning spray, all that comes up. If you have a porous countertop like marble, don't do it on marble. You'll stay. Marble is one of those things where it's very beautiful, but it is like not great for cooking because it strains really easily. But these are quartz, laminate, Wood, I wouldn't do it on wood either. Countertops, put it on a cutting board and mix it up. So I find press and seal is the best, but you can also do it with saran wrap. You're essentially gonna take little bits of your dough, and then I just kind of make one kind of long log like this. And apparently I have festive press and seal as well. Gotta keep with the moment. Now you could just do red and white, kind of get that candy cane, peppermint theme to it, but I like to have it all. And then kind of press it in here. And then what you do to make the log is you're just gonna kind of roll this up like a burrito. And then you just kind of rub a little along and smooth it out. And this is gonna seal it up. So the press and seal works really well because it seals it. And then once I get to here, I just spin it. And then you kind of just press it and you seal it. And you can put them in a Ziploc baggie, or you can just pop them in your freezer like this. Just smooth them out a little bit. And then once they're frozen, slice and bake it off. Let's go grab our mac and cheese out of the oven. Should have a nice bubbly crust on it now. And we can serve up lunch. And then I've got lots more logs to make. But this, again, I made a big batch of it. This is my double batch. So it will make between 4 and 5 rolls. A single batch makes about 2 rolls. You can bake them all up at one time, but I find that one log, which we cut up, let me see. That's
About
like
50.
About 50 cookies. So it makes a lot of cookies. Now they are lovely, small kind of cookies that you can eat a couple at a time. And you can make your logs much wider, but these are just the perfect size that I have found. Okay, we've got our lovely bacon mac and cheese here. We're ready to kind of serve up our lunch. Let me just clear things. We're gonna get a bowl, but you see how we've got that nice bubbly browned edge on top of it from the Gruyere and the Gouda and the Swiss kind of cooking up. And let me get a nice bowl. And gotta have your shovel. Okay. For lunch today, we have our delicious homemade Gouda bacon chicken mac and cheese with sauteed mushrooms, a little bit of truffle oil. We use Gouda and Gruyere, Swiss, and Parmesan cheese. We seasoned up the chicken with our just Worcestershire, garlic salt, onion powder, and a little bit of Mrs. Dash's table blend. We have our nice cheese crust on it. We have our bacon and there's some green onions. But it is this creamy, rich, delicious kind of one bowl meal, which is just fabulous. It's just your, an entree version of our mac and cheese. And then we'll serve it with some Aunt Aggie's that we baked up here. They're just that perfect mixture between a butter cookie and a sugar cookie. Not too sweet, but not too rich at the same time. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes, you can just go to that link, search for what we made. So we've got our bacon chicken Gouda mac and cheese with our Aunt Aggie's cookies. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets. I've got my Dutch ovens, my cutting boards, my bakeware, all the different things I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.